We're not saying a visit to Bloomington, Indiana will turn you into a forest-bathing, sandal-wearing, dissertation-defending, stray cat rescuing, nonprofit starting, Monroe Lake paddling, guitar strumming, march organizing, vinyl listening, leaf watching, zen finding, coffee roasting, yoga practicing, beer drinking, bread baking, co-op joining, pottery throwing, vintage thrifting, bike everywhereing, art appreciating, farmers market shopping, biz thinking, football fan. But we're not saying it won't. Visit Bloomington. See how it inspires you.
It's free music season, and you could take a road trip to Madison to see Chicago legends Lil Ed and the Blues Imperials play on the shores of Lake Monona. With the Isthmus in the background, San Damiano Park is the perfect venue for outdoor festivals and music. Enjoy the energy of both at the first concert on the shore of the season, held during the Harry Whitehorse International Wood Sculpture Festival. Make the trip Thursday, June 25th for Lil Ed and the Blues Imperials, presented by 98.7 WVMO. Stay at the Country Inn and Suites in Monona and use promo code LSAND for 25% off your room. Learn more at sandamianomonona.org. That's SANDAMIANOMONONA.org. Today on CityCast Chicago. Spoiler alert, Chicago's mayoral election is just 9 months away, my friend, so we should probably start talking about it. Plus, it looks like the Hammond Bears might actually be a go. It's Monday, June 8th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. We've got two amazing contributors in the building with us, voices that at this point you should recognize. Lee John Greco, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks again for having me, Jacoby.
We've also got Brandon Pope in the building. Always a pleasure.
Hey, what's good, bro?
Honestly, I was going to talk about sunny days or some bagels or something. And then right before we started recording, we got yet another one of those Bears executive posts. And we've been seeing these over the last, I guess, 5 years now, y'all. The board of directors said they're going to move forward with a plan to build a stadium in Hammond. First reactions, Lee, Brandon, who wants to take it?
Oh, my God.
Well, look. I think this is going to be fine. It's going to be fine, everybody. Just calm down. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's frustrating. But Hammond is close. And it's, especially for the south side of Chicago, it's going to be a real benefit to be close to the games. Maybe even easier to get in and out of. You know, Mayor Johnson's worried about that too.
Cannot believe that's what I wanted to talk about today before
That
this
interview?
Bears news broke. Who would admit to leaving a playoff game, any playoff game, let alone Brandon Johnson, for him to leave? And like, he's the mayor, so I'm guessing he had a box seat. He wasn't, you know, out in the cold during that game.
Potentially a police escort in and out of the game. Yet,
How
if people
hard
are not,
could it be for him to get in and out of there that you're like, oh, let me dip out early? Not a great look.
if people are not familiar with what we're talking about, last week, Mayor Johnson was doing an interview with local sports talk show and admitted to leaving the Bears-Packers playoff game early when it looked like we was finna get our asses whooped. Of course, I was in the building for that game, and the rest of us know how it ended with the Bears putting on one of the greatest comebacks in NFL playoff history. You didn't have to admit that months later. You could have just ate that. Nobody was forcing you to admit that. And the point he was trying to make was getting in and out of Soldier Field. Like, there is no shock to anybody if you've been to a Bear game. It sucks. We all know that. He's trying to lobby for the city to sort of wrangle back control of the stadium conversation. It came out last week that there were more calls between some of the people in the Bears front office and the mayor's office about sort of reigniting that conversation. And so in that broader interview, he was talking about why Chicago is the best place. And, you know, when you're trying to make an argument, you want to give some of the pros, some of the cons. He could have kept the leaving the game early thing to himself. But when the board of directors announced this last week, I was not that shocked, because with state lawmakers deciding to wrap the spring session without coming up with a plan, right? The House passed one plan, the state Senate passed another plan. They couldn't agree on something. It really felt in a lot of ways they were calling the Bears bluff. Will you actually go to Hammond? Like, will you give up the chance of going out to Arlington Heights where you've purchased all this land? And this feels like the Bears saying it wasn't a bluff. This is real. But I think the thing that makes me laugh here is it feels like once again the Bears are playing their hand early. Because similar to Arlington Heights, you purchased all of that land. You didn't do an economic study, a traffic study. You didn't have any sense of what type of money you could get from the surrounding municipalities, what type of infrastructure resources you'd get from the state. And clearly, seeing as how it's been 5 years, they didn't plan that accordingly. And so every time they announce a statement, it's felt like they've been on the back foot. And here, I feel the same way. Y'all haven't done any environmental studies. This thing sits very close to BP's largest refinery in the world. It covers 1,400 acres. You will see the smokestacks from the stadium. It sits next to areas that still need remediation. It sits next to Wolf Lake, in which local environmental groups have pushed back new airport construction there and a host of other projects. And so the fight that they may have on their hands from local advocacy groups, despite how quickly Hammond officials and broader Indiana officials have moved quickly to try and lure the Bears across state lines, I'm wondering if in an attempt to gain back political leverage, they put themselves in yet another situation where they still got to spend millions of dollars just to figure out how usable is this land.
Do you think maybe, though, in terms of political leverage, that this is a push to get Springfield to address this in the fall veto session?
Yeah,
that's my
100%.
only thing.
I think they're trying to get they got to be trying to get a special session, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing. At the end of the day, it comes down to one thing and one thing only. Indiana is willing to do whatever it takes to get the Bears, and Illinois is not.
In 40 years, you can buy the stadium back for $1. You can keep pretty much all of the revenue. We'll help you build your little Bears town around it. Yeah, I hear you.
It's a bad deal for Hoosier taxpayers, and the governor doesn't seem to care at all. They're literally saying, "Hey, we're gonna let y'all have whatever," right? And Illinois is saying we got some red lines here. Speaker Chris Welch actually just put out a statement speaking about some of those red lines he actually has. He does not want to raise taxes. He does not want to have a taxpayer-funded stadium. He says Illinois remains open to ongoing efforts to secure the Bears in Illinois. However, it's going to take time to get it right. And he's not willing to sacrifice what he says is, provide property tax relief off the backs of working people. The relationship between the Illinois legislators and the Bears themselves is kind of soured a bit. This does seem like if the Bears want to just get this thing done, they got to move forward, and Hammond seems like the ones that are going to give you everything you want. Illinois, it's not moving.
I've already said it. The likelihood that I would have gotten to a Hammond game quicker than the Arlington Heights game is very good. I am just to potentially have made such a commitment without really laying out the findings of this area. Of course, they have till 2032 or 33 with their lease in Soldier Field. So there's still plenty of time to get the ball rolling on some of those things. But due diligence here just doesn't seem to be on the Bears side at all. And again, I think, for all of the criticism that can be had for state lawmakers, I think the fact that they haven't just handed over, billions of dollars over the last 5 years, I do think is a bit of a win.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Buffalo originally, and kind of watching how New York State just spent billions.
For a billionaire got way more money than the McCaskies.
Terry Pagula. Yeah. He has that fracking money. Terry Pagula is not hurting for money. He also owns the Sabres, and yet we just handed him a blank check to build this fancy new stadium. And again, you talk to an economist, and football stadiums in particular don't have a great return on investment, because you only have 8 home games a year, Plus, maybe you have a concert now and then. And not every concert is going to be like Taylor Swift or Beyonce at Soldier Field, which those did have massive economic impacts for Chicago. But that's not the norm. So, yeah, I just don't think giving public money is a good choice for Illinois. It's also not a great political choice for somebody like J.B. Pritzker, who is, supposed to be this pragmatic progressive and obviously wants to run for president.
Maybe wants to take this show on the road soon.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this last thing. At the end of the day, both sides are going to point fingers at each other, but I think people are going to be fine.
Speaking of forthcoming elections and speculation, last week we had one of our first major names to throw their official hat into the ring for Chicago's forthcoming mayoral election. A reminder, people, that is taking place on February 23rd, 2027. Now, this first name is of no shock. If you've been following their YouTube over the last few months, then you could tell that Illinois State Comptroller Susana Mendoza was planning this big announcement. But Pope, what is their platform? And as somebody who has already run, why do they think this time will be different?
Yeah. For those who aren't too familiar, Susana Mendoza, Illinois State Comptroller, serving her third term. She announced recently that she would not seek another term, which raised a lot of alarm bells for people that she would be jumping in the race. And here, sure enough, she's the first to officially do so. We've had Mike Quigley, say that he's considering it and launch a website. We've had Maria Pappas say that she is going to do it, but it's not an official endorsement, whatever that means. This is the first official start to the race. And she's running on fiscal responsibility. In her launch message, she positioned herself as a fiscal manager, a problem solver. She argued that Chicago faces different challenges like affordability, public safety, trust in government, economic growth. And then she said that the city hall was facing a blizzard of incompetence, a shot at the current occupant of City Hall and Brandon Johnson. She's framed her campaign around the idea that Chicagoans are paying more and getting less from government. And so that's what she's going for. She did run back in 2019 in that wide open race to replace Rahm Emanuel. She finished fifth in a crowded field and did not advance to the runoff, where Lori Lightfoot eventually won. Will she fare better this time around? It's going to be another crowded field. Lots of names out there that are expected to jump in. Willie Wilson again. Alexi Janulius, the Secretary of State, and lots of others who we may not even be thinking of. So, I think the key thing for me when I look at this race is Brandon Johnson is obviously going to still have the backing of the Chicago Teachers Union. That means he's going to have the ground game and political operation. He's still popular on the south and west sides of the city. And when you look at a Chicago map, you need the south and west side of the city and black voters to power you through to win the fifth floor. So at the end of the day, can she make a runoff? Sure. Against Brandon Johnson, probably. Can she win? That's going to be a big question going forward.
I also add there are a couple of big differences between 2019 and today, especially when it comes to that race. One of the reasons that Lori Lightfoot was able to emerge victorious is she was branded as, the outsider, which at the time, that's what people wanted. You have to remember Toni Preckwinkle, who faced off against her. One of the knocks against Preckwinkle was her close association with Alderman Ed Burke.
Ed Burke, of course, has since been charged, convicted, and sentenced to 2 years, fined $2 million for racketeering, bribery, and extortion. And you bring up that connection between him and Toni Preckwinkle and that being used against her in that runoff. And it was that same connection that people made between Burke and Susana Mendoza, who also fancies herself a mentee of Michael Madigan, another famous Illinois politician who has since been convicted.
Yeah. And so I think it's kind of interesting that that was such a game changer back in that election, because I'm not sure that is going to play the same way. I feel like younger voters often don't even know who Ed Burke is, although I guess there's a question of whether young voters are even going to turn out. But I don't know that those connections with kind of this old guard of Chicago matter as much to people as just sort of the everyday operation of the city, which I think is what Mendoza is getting to when she says that there's this blizzard of incompetence. I think it's safe to say that Brandon Johnson had a pretty rocky start to his tenure. Number of people in his cabinet have either resigned or have been fired. I think from a communication standpoint, he had a little bit of a rocky start. But Susana Mendoza is also taking more of a rightward tack as well. So more support for police, more support for these tough on crime policies rather than the progressive policies that people like Johnson and former state's attorney Kim Foxx have espoused. And we've seen that even before she launched her campaign. I remember just a few months ago when there was the hearing for Sheridan Gorman, the Loyola student who was shot and killed by a Venezuelan migrant. She showed up after that hearing to make a statement to the press. And I thought, well, this is weird. She doesn't really have any real reason to be here. So she's obviously using this as sort of a pre-campaign platform to criticize either Brandon Johnson's policies or basically take this tough on crime stance or tough on immigration stance.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting in that point, because I saw an interview around that time, and she didn't really mix words. She said, she was calling for people's deportation. She blanketly said things like criminals have no place in our society. It's interesting, given that I watched some of her YouTube videos over the last couple of months, and she's taken tours of Asia on Argyle and Chinatown and gone through Little Village. And for her announcement to center so strongly on, putting cranes in the sky and building in Chicago and bringing businesses back and, this hard line on public safety and working with the police, it does not feel inventive. It does not feel creative. And it doesn't seem to make her stand apart. And for there not to be as much, for you to be going to Los Comales and be announcing this in Little Village, the stance didn't seem as strong out against the federal government and ICE enforcement and talking down to the president. And so, I was very torn between these sort of for the people videos and touring the streets of Chicago and the platform, which Brandon Johnson has already beat, right? We could talk about his rocky start, which was to be expected for a person who had never held that line. And as somebody who has found all the moments to both be critical and pass some compliments, I think we've all seen him take stronger control over his communication, right? Him being faster in press conferences, the ways he has rallied support. His comment section ain't as filled with much vitriol these days as it was in the early. And so to come out and take the sort of hardline positions on public safety and growing Chicago's economy when even a lesser experienced Brandon Johnson has already beat that platform, seemed like an interesting choice.
I do think, even though I think what you're describing is kind of this paradox between embracing these immigrant neighborhoods, but then taking a tough on crime, tough on immigration stance, it might seem like those two don't go together. But I actually think a lot of immigrant communities and like second generation communities do embrace that same messaging. They embrace tough on crime. It's kind of the idea of like, okay, pull up the ladder behind us. I also think it is very intentional to open up her campaign in Little Village, obviously a big Mexican neighborhood in Chicago. Mexican Americans in general, as we saw in the last presidential election, many voted for Trump. In Chicago, the Hispanic vote is certainly not a monolith. You have, Puerto Ricans that tend to be more progressive. But I think what we're seeing with Mexican Americans in Chicago and across the U.S. is a similar pattern to what we saw with Italian Americans, where it's a rising middle class, and also as they kind of move through each generation, there's an embrace of whiteness. And what comes with that is this embrace of like traditional authority, like the police, and rejection of other immigrants. And so I think that's what Mendoza is probably tapping into.
For sure. For sure.
You know, she is definitely going to have a lane here. You know, if she's going to campaign as she will on fiscal responsibility, you know, I mean, this is a city that deals with a lot of financial issues. We got pension obligations, budget gaps, debates over taxes, economic growth questions, all that. However, I call it kind of the corporate Democrat lane in Chicago. That lane that's been growing and emerging and seemed to have some energy, mostly because of the opposition to Brandon Johnson and CTU. The key for them to actually win elections, though, is they can't run a Vallis 2.0 strategy. And if that is what Mendoza is going to do, it's probably not going to be that successful, especially in a crowded field where other people are going to try to kind of occupy that same lane. Maybe even Paul Vallis himself, if he decides to jump back in. She's going to have to find some way to appeal to a more progressive side of the city. And that means, you know, she's going to have to answer for putting out tweets saying to port people back to El Salvador. She's going to have to answer questions about her views on the Trump administration and the immigration policies. And she's going to have to be more clear-eyed and communicative about where she stands on disparities within the city and addressing them.
And I think we're going to see in this election cycle a lot of candidates embrace, you know, this Mamdani-esque sleekness in terms of their video packaging, their events, the ways they're trying to show up around the city. But we have to remember that was partnered with him focusing really strongly on some key critical solutions. I don't even live there, and the amount of times I heard free grocery stores, right, or make the buses free or things like this. But like, I understand that, you know, the tried and true politics of Chicago, you got to reach your sex, your awards, right? You gotta. There are some talking points you are definitely going to be hitting on. But if all you have right now is grow the tax base and more police equates to a better feeling of public safety, like, we can be more creative than that. Where are we going to be imaginative? That's how you're going to rally more people to the polls versus trying to secure your small surefire base.
I also just wondered, to the point of this being a crowded field, it feels like so far it's already a crowded field in terms of those corporate Democrats, like you said.
Yeah.
Like, Lexi is probably going to emerge, maybe Bill Conway, although I feel like, you know, Lexi has more money than him already and will probably just like cannibalize his votes.
I see you, Janulius, with $18 million, just slowly starting to stack up.
You know, I can't think of other progressive rising stars who, A, have a war chest already, and B, have enough experience or the want to be mayor right now who would emerge. Maybe Cam Buckner again, because he's like far enough away from the DUI stuff, which I think was the major thing that drew him back. But like, I always kind of thought Cam Buckner was like the alternative to Johnson. I thought they were so similar in a lot of ways, and that Buckner had more experience. But, you know, I think sadly he had some baggage that maybe he's gotten some distance from now.
I mean, obviously, Cook County Commissioner is not in some way a huge position. And we know Johnson's name recognition very much buoyed by his connection to the teachers union. But I think Buckner and like other alders, the reason you don't see a lot of alders, you know, faring well in mayoral races, though they always throw their name in the hat. I think the same is maybe true for some state reps, is that the time it takes to get your name recognition spread across the city, which is why I will give Mendoza that credit to start a ground campaign that in some respects was rooted in neighborhood tours, being seen across the city, because state comptroller, that's not moving the needle for people. You as the chief financial officer and you helped pay the bills on time and the credit ratings got better.
It's like the kind of thing that like a Cranes reader or a Bloomberg reader loves. They're like, ooh, the credit rating. Like it's a very small section of Chicago that gets really, boosted by that kind of stuff.
It's Twitter.
But we also been in runoff after runoff, and so you also don't need to get you're not getting 51 out the gate, right? More times than not, it feels. And so maybe it is smart to just play to your base and try and get to the runoff, and then use that. What would it be? Month and a half to try and show some more of those citywide bona fides. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting election cycle.
And to your earlier point, I think it would be a surprise if Johnson did not go for re-election, because who on that left side is really going to challenge him, right? Unless Cam Buckner were to do it, and Cam and him are allies. So it's like, if he were, maybe that would be a challenge, but I don't see anyone else emerging in that progressive lane.
The only person that has kind of been like a fly in his ointment since sort of the beginning of his tenure within city council is Alderman Andre Vasquez.
Yeah.
But I think Vasquez has always wanted power within city council. Like, I think he's always been trying to circle the wagons for like the best committee position.
Yeah.
Which honestly is smart, because you could be like an Ed Burke, without the corruption, and just like sit on the finance committee or the zoning committee and wield a ton of power in Chicago for decades.
Because history says if you run for that big seat, you probably gonna be on your ass in city council. And that's why I always, in the last election, I kept saying, I was like, every time I saw Alder throw their name in the hat, I was like, maybe this is just a really ceremonial way to retire. Is they just want the name recognition before they get out and go get another job. And the last thing they said they did was they ran for mayor, which is, you losing that, you walk in the room, people ain't going, loser. Like, oh, candidate for mayor.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm not going to name names.
Way to get a promotion somewhere else.
But I think there are a lot of people who ran in the midterms who used it as a resume builder. And we see that in all kinds of elections. You see somebody running just for the fun of it, just for giggles, or so that they can write a book and then they can run again. I mean,
or they can keep they grift going across the city, right? They scam a little community service grift.
Yeah, that's true too.
And with that, I'd like to announce my official. No, I'm joking. Nah, never.
Before we wrap up today, almost in every episode, I am reaching out to our listeners, asking y'all to send us emails, texts, voicemails, and sometimes y'all actually send those things in. And so we wanted to go through some of our most recent favorites, including this voicemail we recently got from Marie about some nostalgic brands.
Good morning, Jacoby and City Cast family. This is your sister from the Shy, living in the Valley of the Sun, Marie. Just got finished listening to your walk down memory lane of Chicago. There were a couple of other things that I remember. I also remember the White Hen Pantry on 91st and Stony and the Moo and Oink over there. I lived in Avalon Park, so I remember A&P grocery store that was on 83rd and Stony. It became Stony Island Food. I haven't been there in a long time. Don't know if it's still in existence. I also remember Marshall Fields. Actually, when I was cleaning out my garage, I found an old Marshall Fields shopping bag, and I found a Jingle Elf from the old Marshall Fields Jingle Elf Parade. I also remember Charles Stevens and Patters that were downtown. There are so many things. Oh, the biggest thing, Jacoby, you might remember, Taurus Flavors. That was on 85th and Stony Island that got ran into by those young girls during COVID. Broke my heart. I heard that there are other Taurus Flavors that have come up, but the original Taurus Flavors was like, that's not them. Continue to do a good job. I enjoy listening to it and keeping my ties to Chicago through CityCast Chicago. You all have a great day. Peace.
Marie, you just
Aw.
made my entire day. I appreciate that love and that energy. A whole bunch of brands I remember. Taurus Flavors, I remember saying on the podcast some months ago that I missed them RP, and somebody reached out and was like, they are back open. I think they over off 65th and Western. But yeah, I got to get over there. I haven't tried that one just yet. But Marie, when the sun gets too hot out there, feel free to come home and enjoy Summertime Shy with the rest of us. We're going to always be here with open arms for you. And please keep on reaching out, being a part of the podcast. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We also got some great texts from listeners. Shout out to Ellen, who said, this is Ellen from Sam Meyer's bookstore, of course, which is a bookstore not too far from me. Thanks for the mention this morning about the Shy filming at the shop. What great folks to work with. Love your show. That is always great to hear, because a production coming into your space is a lot. Could shut down the store for a few days. You know, the hope is that the crew is very respectful to your entire shop and everything there. Everything is put back where it needs to be. People aren't just knocking things over. And so it's really good to hear that after, 8 long seasons, as they're wrapping up, that the Shy crew is as wonderful and pleasant to work with as they always have been. And so that is really good to hear. And it was so cool when they popped up on the screen. Is there a Chicago business y'all want to see represented on screen? I want to see the Stony Island Arts Bank in a movie.
Ooh,
so
that would be nice.
Damn bad. Like a rom-com, and that's like one of the first dates, like some Love Jones type. Like,
oh, yeah.
Like that.
I love
Get
it.
some tea. They just opened up the new tea spot down. It actually opens today. A little. You go in for some tea. Get some desserts, go up and see the Johnson Publishing Library, see the Frankie Knuckles collection. Like,
oh, yeah.
I love it. I love it. I would love to see some Ping Tom Park get some love. I think
yeah.
it's so beautiful. I'm surprised it's not been utilized more for just like a casual stroll in the park dialogue scene, or even like an action movie scene of some sort. Like, I don't know. It's just like, it's a really cool setting. You've got the water there.
A chase through Ping Tom Park or Chinatown that leads to Ping Tom Park, or in reverse, would be hard. Be hard. You get the shot of the train line right over as you cross in. Oh my God, you got the bridge that's always raised over there. Obviously, you're going to get some water taxi shots, the skyline. Now, obviously, going through Chinatown, all of the just like colors. Man, I think we didn't scout 2 locations in 45 seconds.
I feel like Chinatown, it's perfect. No.
I think we got our last shot location, because another listener texted us about where they would take visitors. We asked, since a lot of people's family and friends come into the city around this time, I got a bunch of family in next week and then for the 4th. So we were asking listeners, where would y'all take y'all people? And they said, good morning. One place I'll be taking my family this summer is the Chicago Cultural Center. Some stuff going on there. Summer cinema screenings through CIFF. There's also family matinees through the summer. 100%. If you got like a rom-com with maybe just a little bit of action B story, maybe even C plot, and you hit the Cultural Center, Ping Tom Park / Chinatown, and Stony Island's Art Bank, which is just blocks away from the Obama Presidential Center, which itself is only blocks away from Promontory Point. I mean, you got yourself a damn good short film.
Promontory Point is a good spot.
Right? We need to get to the west side. Maybe we can find a moment for them to take a day to Lincoln Park Zoo or something, get out to the conservatory, take a historic Austin tour like we just did with our neighbors. Shout out to the Chicago Architecture Center. But I think our locations have come together. You ain't got to look how easy it is. Now you got to get permits for all them places. So I suggest guerrilla shoot. Just go out there with the camera and get it.
I would love a guerrilla shoot in Chicago to see how real Chicagoans act when you're
100%.
If someone's in a weird costume or dressed weird. A time travel movie in Chicago, I feel, would go really hard. Either somebody coming from the past to the future, or like I love like Art Deco Chicago. So like, anything filmed at like Carbide and Carbon building.
A sexy bottle of champagne.
And I love that in Chicago, like so much great architecture is preserved, so you don't have to change anything, We've talked about the Green Mill being a spot that like hasn't changed at all. There's so many old theaters too that are pretty much the same. The Aragon I hate it from an acoustic standpoint, but that would really slap for like a dance hall scene.
You know what Chicago's missing? We are missing, we haven't had a giant robot or monster raging through the city since the Transformers. Why are the Avengers not fighting here? They just wrecking through New York. What's going on? Now I just want to make a movie. We just need to like start a production house, CityCast, film studio, and just
100%.
I would be down. I would do
What's
it.
What's y'all dream location? 773-780-0246. And before we wrap, last week, as people in Wicker was fighting over bagels, local versus corporate, the rest of us was just out here celebrating National Donut Day. And shout out to David N., who reached out to the newsletter to let us know that an old fashioned is their go-to. They love the density and the glaze. They really love a pistachio old-fashioned from Stan's, which is nice because people don't be out here capping for Stan's. That's what's up. They said their favorite donut on the planet. And then shout out to Alex R., who said their go-to donuts are from Roaster's Bakery, aka the oldest bakery in Chicago. They're on the way to work, and they're always a huge hit. So shout out to Roasters out in Humboldt Park. They also love Something Sweet Donuts. And then, of course, I love me some good old-fashioned donut. That is my spot. Got to get out to Old Fashioned to see Mr. B. He been there since 1972, I believe. And he's still being there, hand glazing them things his damn self. And so shout out to every single listener of CityCast Chicago, reader of our daily newsletter. Thank y'all for always reaching out. Again, 773-780-0246. And if you attended our neighbors event last week at Switchyards, our live taping, or our tour in Austin a couple weeks ago, we appreciate y'all. And I want y'all to know we are trying to bring more and more of these events. So if you want to tell us what type of events you'd like to see, again, shoot us a text or a voicemail. Maybe you'll hear yourself on the podcast. I want to give a huge thank you to our guest today. Always a pleasure sitting down and talking with y'all. Lee John Greco, thank you for making time.
Thanks again for having me on, Jacoby.
And Brandon Pope, thank you for stopping by.
Always a great time.
Some good news. The annual Puerto Rican Festival and People's Parade is back this weekend. They gonna have over 25 rides out there, 150 plus vendors, talent shows, live performances, local art, and so much more. I try to get out there every single year. It's one of my favorite festivals every summer. I will drop a ticket link in the show notes. As always, we appreciate you for listening, reading, sharing us with your friends and family. That's the best way to help this podcast grow. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow with some clips from our live show. You don't want to miss it. Talk to you then. Peace.